What is up? My name is James McCool. I'm the owner of PaydiRtDFS.com. Today is going to be the NFL DFS Week 6 Saturday stream. We're going to be drinking some wine and some beer. It turns out I didn't have enough wine in the fridge for a actual good pour, so I brought up some beer as well. We're going to be talking about what looks like a pretty good DFS slate, all things considered. The ownership trends are really interesting. We're going to talk about that kind of right off the bat, but ownership trends are really interesting. It's pretty spread out outside of kind of two running backs. And then overall, there are some pretty nice spots to exploit in terms of macro environments. So definitely be wanting to do that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty excited to talk about it. If you have been hanging out in here with me for the last couple of minutes, we're talking about me taking next week off. I probably will not take next week off. I don't know why I would, and I'm interested to hear what reason I would have to take the day off. I might have forgotten my anniversary. It might be my mom's birthday. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, this looks like a pretty good week. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the chat. I'll answer them as I can. If not, we're just going to kind of go through things we usually do. We'll start with macro environments, looking at like team totals and stuff like that. We're going to look at ownership trends so we can get an idea of who is looking more overvalued and who's looking more undervalued and who's gaining a lot of steam throughout the week. And then we're going to break down into each one of the models. We're going to look at the range of outcomes. We're going to look at contest simulations. We're going to look at the pivot finder, stack finder, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah. If you guys have any questions, then please let me know. And with nothing else happening, then let's go ahead and just get started on things. I'm going to get some contest sims running right now, just so that we have an idea of what things look like by the time that we get to them. I don't want to be sitting here waiting for them. So we're going to go ahead and start with that. I also need to bring up the research sheets, which is something I forgot to do. Remember me taking a week off around this time last year or two? I think I took time off maybe 2 years ago trying to get ready for NBA. But maybe, was it last year? Was I traveling? I might have been traveling. I don't remember. But short answer, outside of long answers, no. I won't be taking any time off this next week. We have to get ready for NBA. Those who've been in the Discord and have been paying attention know that American Numbers is working with me this year to improve some systems, specifically on the NHL and NBA side. So I am working to get a lot of things automated for NBA so that we can be in a better spot than we have been in years past. I have not been shy in admitting that my NBA product has been the worst product that I offer over at Paydirt, and I really want to improve that. So this next week is going to be a lot of NBA focus. For those of you keeping count in the background, this is a Schofferhofer, I guess. I don't know how to pronounce this, but it's a watermelon mint beer type thing. It's German quality, I guess. It's a beer. And then I also have a glass of wine here. This is actually a really good wine. I don't know what the name of it is, but it was expensive, and it was recommended to Margaret by the people who usually sell her the wine that she gets for me. But it is really, really good. Really like deep cherry notes. It's really nice. I'm a wine connoisseur now, by the way. I'm getting out of DFS and becoming a wine guy. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to go main right screen here. Double fisting. Important to do. Double fisting, two very different things. Like, this is very Chad and this is very Mary, this is very mommy. Very different vibes going on in each hand here. So that's going to be the vibe tonight. Let's go ahead and start with some macro stuff here. We're going to take a look at game totals first off. So I'll zoom in here. Looks like, I'm pretty sure that Chargers Dallas is not on the main slate. Arizona and the Rams is its highest total at 48 overall. That's really, really low for a main slate highest total. It just kind of speaks to this week overall, where we had the Chiefs on Thursday Night Football, and then we have the Chargers on Monday Night Football. So we don't have a lot of teams that are facing each other that are really, really good on both sides. I'm actually surprised that the Cincinnati-Seattle total is so low. 44.5 here for Cincinnati and Seattle is really low. These are both teams that, when healthy, end up needing to be more pass heavy, and we have drop back percentage for Cincinnati at 68%, 61% for Seattle. Both teams have decent play projection, 64 plays for both. So I'm pretty surprised that this total is low, 44.5. I would have thought this would be at least in the 47 or 48 range. Outside of this 48 total, we have Carolina, Miami. Miami is a massive favorite here, 14-point favorites over Carolina. Raheem Mostert is going to be massive chalk tomorrow, mostly because of this. And when we get into looking at ownership trends, we'll see that. The other main thing with Raheem Mostert and Miami is that Jeff Wilson is not going to play. Devon Achane is on IR. And I'm pretty sure that Salvon Ahmed is... I don't remember if he's active or not, but he never has a big role. So it should just be Raheem Mostert. We've talked a couple times over the last couple weeks of running backs that are in really, really good spots that are just really good chalk. We have another one right here. Miami is a massive favorite with a running back that is expected to get the vast majority of the receiving work, right? Just another good spot for a running back. And then after that, we had Denver, Kansas City 47 on Thursday Night Football, and then we dropped down in this 44.5. So really kind of a shitty week in terms of over-unders. The games look competitive, though, right? Outside of this Miami-Carolina game, we have a 7-point total with Arizona, who we know can hang. A 14-point total for Miami-Carolina. We have a 3-point total, or a 3-point spread. Sorry, spreads, not totals. 3-point spread for Cincinnati and Carolina. Indiana, Jacksonville is a 4-point spread. 3-point spread for Minnesota, Chicago. There's a lot of games that actually have pretty close spreads here. As far as the lowest totals here, San Francisco, Cleveland is just, that's an abhorrent over-under of 36. It's pretty incredible to see a team with an over-under of 13.25, with a team total of 13. That's pretty brutal overall. Outside of that, everything is kind of in this 40 range. So really interesting week in that perspective. There are not very many game environments that you look at and you feel like you really need to have a lot of exposure to. That Arizona Rams game, that's an okay game environment with over under 48. But we know that, the Rams have Kyren Williams, who they're willing to just give a full role to. Arizona has shown that they are willing to air the ball out, especially last week. The dropbacks over expectation was really, really high. So that game has some upside, but it could also kind of go sideways a little bit. If the Rams end up not clicking, which they should. They have Cooper Kupp back and he's 100% healthy, so they should look good. But say that they end up going sideways a little bit and this game ends up being, the Rams just kind of running with Kyren Williams, and that's where all the fantasy points go to. I could see that for sure. And then this Miami-Carolina game, obviously, that game looks like it should just be the Mostert show, which is fine. But I can see spots where you could stack up Miami and try to get the goodness from that. It's not like they're not going to be throwing the ball whatsoever against Carolina. So interesting over-under spots here, interesting macro environments. There's not anything, in weeks past, I had Buffalo-Miami that I had circled as a terrific game environment. A couple weeks ago, I had that Cincinnati game last week circled as like a terrific game environment. And this week, it doesn't really feel like there's anything that looks like I'm really into it. The best spot is going to be the Rams, 27 team total. And their team total is... 27.5 is fine. Miami, with a team total of 31, everyone is going to be on Mostert. Mostert's going to be, David Montgomery's 45% owned last week. I think Mostert could very, very easily end up in like the 45 to 50% owned range. Like, how expensive is he? Yeah, he's 6,400. That boy is going to be owned. He's going to be like 50, 55% owned probably in GPPs. But it's an insanely good spot. So I think, in any spot where you don't have a Miami stack, I think you just have to lock him in. And even in a Miami stack, right? Like, it could make sense to just end up using him with Tua and Tyreek or something like that. I'm sure that I'll try to build a lineup like that and just go the full onslaught, because Miami is implied to score the most points on the entire slate. If they put up 31 points and nobody else clears 20, or if they put up 36 points and nobody clears 25, that's enough points to go for a full onslaught. So I may end up considering something like that. Let's check chat here. Imagine having games on a sheet or in a model that's not happening. You know what, sir? I do my best, all right? And especially because I ran these models like 5 minutes before I jumped on stream. I feel like I do a pretty good job. Yucky weather in Cleveland, supposedly. Yeah, I've heard that as well. It's just not a good game environment. San Francisco is in a good spot in a lot of ways. Their defense looks very popular as well, which, again, it should. They're up against a backup quarterback for a team that has not had a very good offense in general, right? So, it's not a good game environment overall. I know it was an NHL joke. And I think that we handled NHL pretty well. We were handling things, but there were certainly a few things pointed out throughout the day that could have been a little bit smoother, for sure. Let's take a look at ownership trends here really quick. I will zoom on in here. I'll zoom in here. There we go. All right, so looking at trends here, the highest trending players here are Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Mostert. So that makes sense, obviously. Miles Sanders is out this week, so Chuba Hubbard is going to get the majority of the carries up against Miami. He is only 4,300. That is far too cheap for somebody who's expected to get a pretty decent role on a full slate. And then Raheem Mostert, as I talked about, he's just in a terrific spot. The interesting thing here is that these two running backs are going up against each other, right? So this is Miami versus Carolina, and both of the running backs are going to be chalk, and that is a very interesting proposition in terms of game theory for DFS. So when we have these two spots, for Raheem Mostert to kill you, he probably needs 25 plus fantasy points, right? Like at least 20 plus fantasy points at 6,400. Because when we look at the rest, like let's just go to the pivot finder here really quick. And take a look and see if we have any other pivots off of Mostert. And I'm sure that Tribe wrote this up in the pivots article as well. But let's just see if we have any pivots off of Mostert. So running back, we have basically just him and Kyren Williams, right? And those two both project well. Kyren Williams projects for 18% ownership, and I'd be willing to bet that he is getting negative, or well, I guess he's moving up a little bit. So it's going to be a lot of him and Kyren Williams. There's just not that many pivots off of Raheem Mostert. But if he's going to kill you, like he needs to have 20, 25 plus fantasy points for Chuba Hubbard to kill you at 4,300. That's much different. He needs like 15 plus. Because at 4,300, the opportunity cost of rostering him is basically nothing. We should expect Dante Foreman as well to gain quite a bit of steam at 4,400. So we have a couple backup guys that are going to end up getting ownership. But Chuba Hubbard in that spot, for Chuba Hubbard to kill you, he probably needs to score a touchdown, right? Based on his volume and based on what Miles Sanders has needed in order to get there, and he hasn't even really gotten there this year. For a Carolina running back to kill you, they're going to have to score a touchdown at the very least. For Miami to kill you, obviously, he has scored touchdowns too, but Carolina's team total is only 16, and we can go back and we can see how many rushing touchdowns they're implied for as well. Miami is implied for total touchdowns for Carolina is 1.47. Rushing touchdowns is 0.48. So there's like a 30% chance maybe, and that might be giving it a little bit more juice than deserved, that Chuba Hubbard scores a rushing touchdown. Miami, on the other hand, is implied for 1.17 rushing touchdowns. There's probably like an 80+% chance that Raheem Mostert ends up getting a touchdown with a rushing touchdown projection like this, right? So it's just, there's probably a really good way to end up fading Chuba Hubbard here and maybe going with Dante Foreman instead. If Chuba Hubbard continues to pace him and double his ownership, I would think that Chuba Hubbard probably ends up around 25% owned tomorrow, maybe 30%, and Dante Foreman probably somewhere in the 15 to 20% range. Whichever one of these two guys is lower owned is probably the better play. And realistically, Dante Foreman on a team like Chicago, where even though Chicago is not necessarily a good football team, they are a more run-heavy team, and they're up against what we would consider a worse team with Minnesota, who doesn't have Justin Jefferson. So it's really important to consider that Dante Foreman probably has a better spot and is probably going to be lower owned than Chuba Hubbard overall. It's going to make Dante Foreman a better play as things continue to roll out, so long as Dante Foreman is lower owned. If they're equally owned, then maybe Chuba Hubbard and Dante Foreman are both about the same play. I think Chuba Hubbard has better receiving upside, maybe. We'll see how things look tomorrow. But overall, that's going to be a decision that is going to win so many GPPs. It's Chuba Hubbard versus Dante Foreman. Raheem Mostert and Kyren Williams, that's kind of like the other one where we need to consider things. Most people are going to be stacking the Rams and using Raheem Mostert as their running back. The GPP play, if you're trying to be different, is probably going to be stacking Miami and using Kyren Williams running back. It is very, very similar in terms of the way that you are building out the stacks. I mean, if we go to the range of outcomes and we look at the top two stacks here, right? Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, or Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, right? There's a $1,400 difference here. I guess I can zoom in really quick. So there's $1,400 difference between these two things. It's about the same projection. It's very likely that the ownership is going to be higher on this Rams stack than it is going to be on the Miami stack, simply because less people are going to be using Kyren Williams and more people are going to be using Raheem Mostert. So this is basically the same roster construction, but you can get half of the ownership if you end up just going with Kyren Williams in a Miami stack instead of Raheem Mostert and a Ram stack. And that's really, really attractive. Let's see. Let's take a look at some of the other trending stuff here. So 49ers trending high at 4K. I can buy it. I don't know why the Patriots defense is trending high, 2,600. It's not like Las Vegas has been terrible. Jimmy G has been efficient. They're healthy, right? I don't know. I don't know why they would be trending at 2,600. I guess to fit people, but they shouldn't be. Evan Ingram is kind of a weird one. I haven't taken a look at like what his recent game log is, but that one kind of seems a little bit weird. I guess we could go look really quick, right? Let's go see what the wide receiver tight end usage looks like for Jacksonville. Let's go by week 5 here. So Evan Ingram, 83. Actually, let's just take a look at Evan Ingram overall. Oops. And yes, I should have a better way to sort this, but fight me about it. Evan Ingram has looked okay. Week 1, expected fantasy points, 8.6. Like his utilization has not been that good, all things considered. Week 5 was his worst week. So it's maybe a little bit weird that he's ending up being chalk here. It's not like he's especially cheap either. 4,500 is not super cheap. So that's kind of a weird one. Vikings defense against Chicago, that's also weird. This is weird chalk, guys. This is weird. This is weird. This is weird. This is weird. This is also kind of weird. But granted, like a lot of this ownership is still relatively low, but it's trending up. Like all these players are trending up. If we sort simply by ownership, Jamar Chase, Jordan Addison, those things make sense, I think. Kyren Williams, he's looking like he's getting ownership, but he's still going to be half the ownership that Raheem Mostert is going to be, so he's still going to be a good play, I think. Yeah, I mean, like the high-owned chalk, I think makes sense, but the trending chalk, man, that's weird. Let's see who is on the negative end of things. So Breece Hall, for whatever reason, went from 20% owned on Thursday down to 11% and then down to 6%. Like losing steam entirely. Alexander Mattison, this one makes more sense because Cam Akers is taking some of his role. DeAndre Swift losing ownership is weird. I think that's weird. He's in a really, really good spot up against the Jets. Philadelphia should be able to do basically whatever they want. Dallas Goedert, again, Philadelphia should just be able to do basically whatever they want. So that negative trend. There's some really interesting stuff here in terms of negative trends. Like all of these players, I think, basically the top 9 players, all of these guys should not be losing as much ownership as they're losing, except for maybe Amari Cooper, and that's just because Cleveland, like initially a projection of 11% was a little bit too high, and now he has a backup quarterback, and the weather kind of sucks, so that would make sense. But like most of these guys, right, like should not be losing as much steam as they're losing. Especially Breece Hall and DeAndre Swift. That's silly that they're losing so much steam. All right. Let's see here. Back to macro table. I'm just going to look at a couple other things here. Highest pass projection for touchdowns is Buffalo, Kansas City, Miami. Miami is going to be top for both, I think. Yeah, Miami's number 3 for rushing touchdowns as well. The Rams actually 1.31. So again, Kyren Williams, really, really good spot. DeAndre Swift, really, really good spot. Understand that 1.29, Jalen Hurts is probably about 75% of their rushing touchdown equity. But DeAndre Swift losing steam in a spot up against the Jets where we should expect Philly to be able to move the ball and not have any problems. DeAndre Swift is in a great spot here with the rushing touchdown expectation. All right, we're going to move on to the range of outcome stuff, but first, we will drink some wine and check the chat. I do believe that the Bears have the worst running back utilization in the league in terms of fantasy usage. I would believe that. We can check it here in a sec. Chicago stacks in consideration for you this week. I want to say yes, but I also don't they looked bad last week. And hear me out. They looked bad because if DJ Moore doesn't go absolutely, literally Julio Jones eruption, they don't do anything. And most of his eruption came on yards after the catch, right? His expected fantasy points for DJ Moore last week was only 18 or something. He ended up at 50. So I don't actually think that he did that well. And I don't think the game plan was really that good. It was just an insane outcome for them. Just a ridiculous... They just chose not to cover DJ Moore, which was stupid, clearly. So, Chicago stacks, I like Justin Fields props more, which is something that you hardly ever hear me say, but because DraftKings decided to fuck up my limit deposits, I have to have some prop bets this week, and I'll talk about some of those a little bit later. But I took the over on 51 rushing yards for Justin Fields. They're just decimated at running back. I think they'll probably utilize him in the running game more than they have. Get him a lot of designed runs. So I think 51.5 yards for Justin Fields looks really, really good. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like, for Chicago, it just doesn't feel like a spot where I expect a significant explosion again. That being said, the stacks look fine. Justin Fields, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet is relatively cheap, looks pretty good, and is low owned. So I can get into it. I think that Justin Fields is in a really good spot, but it's really hard for me to justify stacking him, I think. I like Miami stacks more. I like Rams stacks more. I like Philadelphia stacks more. I like Cincinnati stacks more. I don't know if I'll get to a Chicago stack. But if you want to use Justin Fields as a prop donkey, use him for rushing props and stuff, or if you want to use him in cash, if you have the money to get to him in cash, fine with that. Seattle stacks this week. Yeah, I'm into that. Like I said, I think that over-under for Cincinnati-Seattle is just too low. And even though Seattle didn't look especially good in their last game, I think that's a pretty good game environment overall. Of all of the game environments on the slate, the Rams versus Arizona and Cincinnati versus Seattle seem like the best spots to be. Philadelphia up against the Jets, man, I don't think that that's really all that good of a game environment. I think Philadelphia is just going to control the clock and try to keep their defense off the field because they don't have their cornerbacks. Tampa Bay is in an okay spot, but yeah, I like that spot with a Seattle and Cincinnati game stack. We'll talk a little bit more about that once we get into things, but yeah, I'm into that. I think I'm fine with that. Let's go ahead and jump back into some of the models here. So we're looking at the range of outcomes here. Top overall stacks here are going to be, we'll widen this out so y'all can see. Top overall stacks are going to be Miami and then the Rams. It's just not even close, really, after that. Miami with Tua, Tyreek, and Jalen Waddle projects for nearly 60. And Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua projects for nearly 58. Both just terrific spots. They're expensive. You're going to be spending basically half of your cap if you go with a Tua, Tyreek, and Jalen Waddle stack. But that's a really, really good projection. And frankly, there's enough value to make it work. The hard part, I think, with a Miami stack, and the kind of thing that I think makes me want a Ram stack more, is because if I go with a Miami stack, I'm not going to use Chuba Hubbard. I understand that, like, oh, well, you know, running backs can still get there, and the Miami stack can then, you know, get from behind. But, like, I'm not going to plan on Carolina leading at any point in this game. And, like, I just can't see Chuba Hubbard getting there unless Carolina is in the red zone frequently and like, within the 5, right? Like, it's just hard for me to see Chuba Hubbard getting there against Miami and with such a high-powered offense and being able to move the ball so effectively. Like, I don't even know if Carolina is going to get 60 plays off in this game. Just feels like they're going to get off like 55 plays. Miami is just going to beat them into the ground. We're going to have Mike White starting the fourth quarter again. This is such a brutal spot for Carolina. So with that being said, you know, I don't think that I would be using Chuba Hubbard in Miami stack, but I would be willing to use Chuba Hubbard in a Ram stack, right? Because then what you could do is you go Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, bring it back with, you know, Marquise Brown or who's that dude? Michael Wilson, I think. I don't remember the cheap flyer guy for Arizona. You know, you can bring it back with a pretty cheap bring back, or you can do a full game onslaught, right? You can go Stafford, Kupp, Puka Nacua with Marquise Brown and Zach Ertz, something like that. And then you can use the 2 cheap running backs, right? You can use Dante Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. And that way you're not really bastardizing your stack. If you use Chuba Hubbard with a Miami stack, it just doesn't feel right. If you do it with a Ram stack, you know, you maintain the equity of having a running back in a spot where there might be some win equity for Chuba Hubbard. He only has to score really between 15 and 20 fantasy points, but he does need to score a touchdown, right? The play there is if you stack the Rams and you use Chuba Hubbard, then basically what you're saying is I hope that Carolina basically gets the ball first and Chuba Hubbard scores the first touchdown of the game. And then Miami comes out and clobbers them. That's basically what you're saying with that. It might even be better just to bet Chuba Hubbard as first touchdown scorer and just call it that. Just call it a day. Because if he doesn't score the first touchdown, like, I think it's going to be hard for Carolina to keep up with this Miami team. Bryce Young, he's not it. They just don't got it. So I like Ram stacks more. That's just a long way of saying I can use Chuba Hubbard and Dante Foreman with a Ram stack, and I can't use that combo with a Miami stack. After that, we have Chicago. Like I talked about Chicago, I don't necessarily want to believe that Justin Fields and DJ Moore is going to be as good as they were last week, but Justin Fields has thrown 4 touchdowns in 2 straight games, and he did help Cole Kmet last week as well. So if I do a Chicago stack, it's going to be a skinny stack. It's going to be Justin Fields and DJ Moore, or Justin Fields and Cole Kmet. I'm not going to use the double stack without a doubt. Then we have Philadelphia, who's really expensive and projects considerably worse than the Rams. Then we have Cincinnati, and Cincinnati is relatively cheaper. With all of these, the only one that kind of is a little weird is this Tampa Bay stack, right? Kind of comes out of nowhere. Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. There's going to be basically no ownership on this stack. People don't like stacking Baker Mayfield, but they've been able to put up some numbers. So I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. Go and look really quick at some QB range of outcomes. Justin Fields, just by far the highest. I think Matthew Stafford is, he's going to be the cash game quarterback. It's going to be Matthew Stafford. But if you have the money in a 2v2 and can get up Justin Fields, I think he's probably the best option. As far as running back stuff, we have a lot of relatively cheap running backs that project almost as good as Christian McCaffrey. It makes sense that Christian McCaffrey is only going to be 10% owned, but Christian McCaffrey at 10% owned is pretty hot, right? Like that might make you want to utilize him just because he's low owned. But, Mostert, Kamara, Kyron Williams, all these guys in this mid 66K range all project really, really well. Mostert ownership is obviously glaring there. David Montgomery is likely not going to have any ownership and just continues to score touchdowns at an incredible rate. Josh Jacobs at only 7K, getting a lot of receiving work for Las Vegas, and we should expect that again with New England likely trying to game plan and take away Devontae Adams. And then, we fall off a cliff when you get to Travis Etienne, and Travis Etienne is looking like he's going to have some ownership. So that's a really interesting spot. We're probably not going to be on Travis Etienne. Wide receivers, expensive guys, and then Adam Thielen. The models here at Paydirt have loved Adam Thielen, continue to love Adam Thielen. The dude's targets per route run is just fucking sick, bro. It's good. He's been really, really good, and he has been automatic for Carolina this year. He's still not expensive. He's getting the same workload, basically, as Puka Nacua, but with a way worse quarterback. And they should be in a trailing script. Adam Thielen, I don't know how he's not connected to every single Miami stack this week. He should be. He should be an automatic connection to either Raheem Mostert or Tyreek Hill. If you use Raheem Mostert or Tyreek Hill, you should have Adam Thielen in every single one of those lineups. I haven't been big on forcing correlation this year in terms of game stacks, but Thielen, his usage has been fucking crazy. Let's go take a look at wide receiver and tight end usage for the entire year so far. And I'm willing to bet that he's up there. Go all teams. Let's see here. So Devontae Smith has the best utilization so far. Adam Thielen has the 22nd best utilization of the entire league, and that's mostly just because his expected PPR is so good. What is his air yards per route run? I guess his air yards per route run is ADOT are relatively low, but his targets per route run is above the 20% mark. We love to see that. Getting 40% of the end zone targets. It's getting 41% of all of the third and fourth down targets for Carolina. 41%, man. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's got to be one of the top marks. It's the second best mark in the league. It's right above Wan'Dale Robinson, who, by the way, with only 47% of the routes, getting that is crazy. Just such good usage for Adam Thielen, man. And people are just not quite on him, and they should be. Tight end range of outcomes. So Evan Ingram looks good. We have him projected pretty well. I guess I won't argue with that at 13% owned, but he's not cheap. I'd probably rather just use Zach Ertz or Cole Kmet or TJ Hawkinson, right? TJ Hawkinson is priced way up, though. Before we move on to the contest sims, let's go ahead and check the chat. Evan's still questionable. I'm not sure. Probably. But I think that if he was not going to play, we probably would know that by now. Chuba seems like a trap. I don't know, man. Yes and no. It's just he needs to get there early. If Miami starts running away with this game, I just don't see Chuba Hubbard really being the guy that's going to come out from behind. I mean, I guess I can check his targets per route run really quick. Let's see. I don't think that he is going to be the guy that ends up being the come from behind, catching all the passes. So Chuba Hubbard's targets per route run is about 17%. He has been averaging about 8% of the targets so far on the year. His expected PPR is about 7.4. I mean, granted, like his snaps have been relatively low, and I get that. But his targets per route run of about 17%. That's not where you're going to find like a 15+% target share for somebody. He has to score a touchdown to get there. And I just don't know that I'm willing to bet on that. Who would I use in Philly stacks this week between A.J. Brown, Devontae, and Goddard? All of the above. I think this is probably a Devontae Smith and Dallas Goddard week. A.J. Brown has had his fun, and I think he's probably going to continue to be like a main piece of this offense. Obviously, he's really, really good. But this just feels like a spot where the Jets are down their two best cornerbacks. I think that they're likely going to have to bracket A.J. Brown. Because they can't put a backup cornerback on A.J. Brown in man-man coverage. They just can't. So actually, I can go check really quick what their man coverage usually is, how much man they usually run. Let's see. So, because I'm guessing they run quite a bit of man because they usually have Sauce Gardner, right? Yeah, they run quite a bit of man. 23%. That's one of the higher marks in the league. It's kind of like league average. I'd be guessing that they would end up running more zone in this spot, mostly just because, like I said, that they're not going to put man coverage on A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown's targets per route run against man coverage this year has been 37%. Against zone coverage, it's been 19%. Devontae Smith, on the other hand, has a 22% targets per route run against man coverage, 19% against zone. So we would expect to see A.J. Brown suffer in this spot, mostly because he is so good against man coverage, and I don't think they're going to run a lot of man coverage against him. So, yeah, I'll say Devontae Smith in this spot. And yeah, Sauce has a concussion. He's out. Both him and, I don't know, the other main cornerback for them are out as well. So both of their main cornerbacks are out. So it just seems like a spot where Devontae Smith, up against more zone coverage, is going to end up doing well. All right, let's jump on to contest sims. Contest simmeroonies. So overall, actually, let's just go position by position. If you have not used contest sims over at Paydirt, the way that they mostly work is what we're trying to do is not necessarily give you lineups to play, but show you what players are overvalued at their specific positions so that you can then go use the optimizer and either lock them in or fade them or see what lineups look with or without them, right? The big thing when it comes to contest sims is trying to find where the largest deviations between player projected ownership and player exposure in the winning lineups ends up being. So that's how the Paydirt contest sims work. It's a little bit different than the industry, so if you've been using things at SaberSim and stuff, like they do things very differently. So let's go ahead and look at QB here. The largest edge is on Justin Fields. Projected ownership only about 6%. He shows up in the winning lineups about 17% of the time. The lowest edge gained is going to be on Trevor Lawrence. Projected ownership about 8%. Shows up in the winning lineups about 4% of the time. So let's have a talk here really quick about Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields is a really good play this week. Especially because Cole Kmet is the same price as Evan Ingram, and I think Evan Ingram is going to be like 17% owned, and Cole Kmet is going to be like 7% owned. So not only do we get the extra edge on Justin Fields, but we also get the extra edge on a direct pivot off of the chalk tight end, where we can correlate with our quarterback as well, right? Was asked earlier about if I was on Chicago stacks, and while I'm not necessarily super into the idea of Chicago stacks overall, like they're fine, I do think that the extra edge gained based on the contest sims and the extra pivot gained over on Cole Kmet versus Evan Ingram, I think that's a really, really good spot to exploit. So I do think the Chicago stacks are good, but I don't like DJ Moore as much as I like Cole Kmet. DJ Moore is fine, but I would prioritize Cole Kmet, I think. So, yeah, there's small talk on that. Running back. So the worst edge, and here we are, Chuba Hubbard, projected at 28% ownership, is in the winning lineups only 7% of the time. That's a huge negative edge here. So much so that these guys who have negative edge here, Joe Mixon, Christian McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift, like these guys are green plays simply because if you just fade Chuba Hubbard, you can do whatever you want. The highest edge gain is going to be on Kyren Williams and Raheem Mostert. So these guys are not owned enough. I am willing to bet that Raheem Mostert ends up 40% owned, so he's a neutral play. I am also willing to bet that Kyren Williams ends up 15% owned and ends up a better play than Raheem Mostert overall. When you look at their prices individually, Kyren Williams is going to be a smash play tomorrow on GPPs. Let's take a look at wide receivers. The worst play is going to be Jordan Addison and Michael Pittman. These guys are both negative about 11.5 and 10.5% edge. Jordan Addison projected at about 20% ownership. Michael Pittman projected at 13% ownership. Michael Pittman hardly shows up in winning lineups at all. You can make an argument for Jordan Addison for sure, especially if you're stacking Minnesota. And I'll say it right now, you shouldn't play Jordan Addison unless you are stacking Minnesota, right? Like, don't play Jordan Addison unless you're doing Kirk Cousins with Jordan Addison with TJ Hawkinson, right? And then you're bringing it back with, DJ Moore or Cole Kmet. Or if you're like full game stacking that and you go like Justin Fields, Jordan Addison, Cole Kmet, DJ Moore, like if you do that and you do a bring back with Jordan Addison, that's fine. But like, don't play a one-off Jordan Addison. That's a bad idea. The highest edge gained is fucking DJ Moore. I'm gonna have to play DJ Moore, I guess. Nico Collins and Adam Thielen. This is the third week in a row that Adam Thielen has been a massive positive value. And he's just been making money constantly. Like, people are just undervaluing him. Tight ends, worst edge, Kyle Pitts, TJ Hawkinson. TJ Hawkinson hardly shows up in any. He's just too expensive, man. 6,600, you just can't do it. Highest edge gain is going to be Zach Ertz for the third week in a row, I think. And then Mike Gesicki, Noah Fant, Cade Otton. Like, these guys just kind of show up here and there. And it's mostly just because they're cheap, right? Like, we want to pay for other spots that are more valuable. And then we can look at defenses. There is always a very clear thing here. Is the defense expensive? It's overvalued. Is the defense free? It's undervalued. You should just punt defense. Like, every single week, you should just punt defense. And like, look, man, the Browns are 2,200, right? The weather is supposed to be shitty. Playing the Browns probably makes a lot of sense. Their defense has been really, really good, too, for most of the year. So it feels like playing them at 2,200 makes a lot more sense than playing the 49ers defense at 4K, and I am partially drunk. Also, by the way, there were some over-unders in the Discord about how many times I would tell my cat to be quiet. But the cats are not actually in here. And the reason for that, actually one cat might be in here. We had an instance this week where we had a cat just wander into our house. And, literally just walk in the back door and start yelling at me, the owner and alpha of my house. This cat just walks in, acts like it owns the place. And now it does. So now we have 3 cats, and we're trying to integrate Kershaw and Belly. Belly is the cat's name. She's a very pretty Maine Coon. She's white. She has beautiful markings. But I think she's in here under the couch, and Kershaw is not because they still don't quite get along. So the under is going to hit on those. Probably will not tell my cat to be quiet once this stream unless he starts scratching on the door, and maybe that'll be Marathon. All right. Let's see. We know Margaret is the alpha. She's not, though. She's absolutely not. I am the alpha in the household. Margaret is obviously fantastic, and I love her, and she's everything to me. But the cats respect me a lot. To break down a little bit of like cat pack mentality, right? Like, each cat in a pack has to take time with the alpha throughout the day. Fine, do it. I'm not scared of Margaret. I'm not scared of Margaret or Damascus. I'm the alpha. Whatever. It's not lies, okay? So, and you guys don't care about cat pack mentality. I'm drunk. We need to finish the stream. Anyway, let's move on. So we're going to the right screen again. We're going to look at, I guess we don't need the pivot finder. If you would like to see the main pivots, go check out the article from Tribe. So if you look at the play action week 6, you can go through and look and see who the chalk plays are going to be. Once again, I think that Raheem Mostert and Chuba Hubbard are going to need to be added to this as well. I'll make sure the Tribe knows that. But those guys are for sure going to be chalk. Outside of that, Jordan Addison, Travis Etienne, and DeAndre Swift. Like, you want to run pivot stuff on them for sure. But we are going to want the stock finder. We actually checked if she was shipped. She is not. And, we don't really want to take in strays. Like, it would be one thing if she didn't seem well taken care of. But she's gorgeous. She's not matted. She was not dirty. And she's like, litter box trained. Like, she had a home. We think she was dumped. And again, like, I'm not going to get on a soapbox here. But we think that she was dumped. And there's signs of abuse. Like, whenever I put my hand over her, she's scared of me. And she's scared of men. She loves Margaret, but she is scared of me. We think she was abused and dumped. And that just really sucks. And, the universe gives you... The universe opens certain doors when they need to be opened. And we think that... I'm a big believer that you shouldn't argue with the universe. And if the universe needed to drop this cat in on us because of a bad situation, then that's what needed to happen. Anyway, I'm going to jump into the stack finder here really quick. So if we go back to the range of outcomes here, and we look at the team stacks, we see that Miami, the Rams, Chicago, and Philadelphia and Cincinnati are kind of like the main ones. We do have this Tampa Bay. I'm sure that Tampa Bay will show up, mostly because they have low ownership and a pretty decent median. But Miami, Rams, Chicago, Philadelphia, and Cincinnati, those are going to be the main ones. So let's go ahead and just run the stack finder. Let's do QB plus 2 here, and let's just run things. Let's see what we get here. We end up with a Miami stack, and then a Philadelphia stack, and then Tampa Bay. Yeah, like I thought. And then we kind of, we run into some pretty low projected stacks here overall. But Tampa Bay shows up. Tampa Bay is pretty prevalent here. They just don't have enough ownership for what their projections show, and for the upside of Mike Evans specifically. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin both get really good volume, so... that doesn't surprise me. We do not see Cincinnati here, and we do not see Chicago here whatsoever. So, interesting, the difference there. Do we see a Ram stack? No, we don't even see a Ram stack. So, Miami is the top overall in terms of, like, projection and ownership, and then we don't have a Rams, we don't have a Chicago, and we don't have a Cincinnati. But we do have a Miami, we have a Philadelphia, and we have a Tampa Bay. Let's go ahead and go with a QB plus 1. Go ahead and run the stack analysis there. So here, again, we don't have a Chicago stack here. We have Miami, we have Philadelphia, we have another Miami, then we have Tampa Bay. So it's kind of looking like Miami, Philadelphia, and Tampa Bay. When we're running the stack finder for both QB plus 1 and QB plus 2, those are the ones that mainly show up. Miami, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay. So if you're mostly building off of stuff like this and you're being reticent of ownership, those should be kind of our main targets. Miami and Philadelphia specifically, because the ownership just isn't high enough on them. Miami, when we're looking at them, everybody's going to be on Mostert, but people are not going to be stacking Miami enough. Philadelphia has significantly less ownership than the Rams, but they still project very, very well. And then Tampa Bay basically doesn't have any ownership in a similar kind of stack dynamic as Cincinnati. We think the Cincinnati spot is better. The game environment is better for sure, and I acknowledge that. But overall, I think Tampa Bay stacks look fine. Hold on. Let me go take a look at something here. Who's the over-under for that game? They're up against Detroit? My dudes, that's a good spot, right? Like, it's a good spot. We have been looking to leverage the Detroit spots. We did it with Seattle a couple weeks ago. Tampa Bay is in a good spot here up against Detroit. Nobody is going to be on that game. I think that Cincinnati and Seattle and Detroit and Tampa Bay are very, very close in terms of their shootout potential. Tampa Bay has been a more pass-heavy team. Detroit is, they would like to run the ball more, but Tampa Bay can push them, right? That's a pretty interesting spot. I think Tampa Bay and Detroit is a pretty interesting spot. Cincinnati and Seattle is also pretty good, but is what it is. So I do like that spot. And they're showing up here. Miami, Philadelphia, and Tampa Bay. Those might just be 3 of my stacks tomorrow. I think that'd be pretty good. You're getting whiplash with me using both dark and light mode. Look, man. Okay. I like dark mode more when I'm just using it myself. I like light mode more when I am doing streams like this, right? Because it lightens up my face and it makes it so I don't have to use a fucking ring cam or some shit. Bad golf outside? I don't know. Golf's been fine. Been good. And he played outside with the Rams, right? And he had good ceiling games there. Amon-Ra St. Brown is playing. Like, they have their alpha. That's a good game environment, man. I'm going to build some Tampa Bay stacks. So, the last thing that I want to do here really quick before I go to, like, break down thoughts and stuff like that is I ran 150 lineups over at RotoGrinders. And I just wanted to show kind of what the ownerships are looking like. So Jamar Chase shows up a lot. Marquise Brown shows up a lot. These are the 2 top overall. Show up in 97% of 150 lineups. And then Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Mostert. So I think that we should likely expect Marquise Brown to be like the main guy as a comeback for Rams. Jamar Chase is going to have heavy ownership regardless of what stacks are put together. And then Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Mostert, I think people are going to use them together a lot. And I don't think they should. I think Chuba Hubbard's actually a really bad play. Unless you have, like, I do like a Rams stack or a Philadelphia stack with Chuba Hubbard, mostly because they won't be high enough owned to make it matter. But overall, yeah, those guys, Evan Ingram, I don't think that Kyren Williams is going to be that high owned. I think come tomorrow, he's probably going to be like 15% owned, and he's going to be a really, really good play. Light mode is not for psychopaths. I mean, like, it is, technically. But, like, I like it every once in a while when I'm streaming. Mostly just when I'm streaming. Alright. I'm actually drunk. So let's go ahead and do some final slate thoughts. So let's start from the top. Micro stuff. Game environments. The only really, really good game environments are Seattle, Cincinnati, and Tampa Bay, Detroit. I think those are the 2 best game environments for, like, full stacks, right? Like, if you wanted to go, like, Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, Cade Otton, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Josh Reynolds, right? Like, you could do that. I think that's pretty good. Or the Cincinnati, Seattle, right? Like, you could do either side. Like, you can do a full onslaught there. You can go Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and Irv Smith Jr. with Geno Smith and Tyler Lockett, or you can go with Geno Smith, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Jamar Chase. Like, you can stack it up really, really good on both sides. I think there's a lot of pass equity and pass upside for both those sides. The highest over-under for any team is going to be Miami, and people are just using Mostert. I really like the stacks a lot, especially because I can get so much win equity off of if Miami stacks do all the damage, then Mostert does nothing at 50% owned, and you pass so many people. Miami stacks are a must tomorrow. And then the other spot is the Rams. And the Rams is where you can use Chuba Hubbard. You can go with a Rams stack with Chuba Hubbard and Dante Foreman and have a really, really good high upside stack and still eat a lot of ownership in a way that a lot of people are not doing it, especially because you're fading Raheem Mostert in that scenario, right? So, short list of teams that I'm really interested in stacking. Top overall stacks got to be Miami. I'm going to make a Miami stack first. And then Rams, Philadelphia, and then Tampa Bay. I have to like Tampa Bay. They keep showing up in my stuff. And especially in the stack finder, I really like Tampa Bay stacks. And then Cincinnati and Chicago are they're probably going to get left off a little bit. I do have 5 stacks tomorrow, so I may end up getting that deep. But if I only had 3 stacks, I probably don't get there. As far as the worst play on the slate, it's Chuba Hubbard. I mean, it's not even close. If he doesn't score the first touchdown of the game, he's not going to get there. His targets per route run is not high enough to get there in the 2-minute offense if they're trailing. Miami's defense has not necessarily been great, but like Carolina's offense is led by a fucking beta, Bryce Young. Guy sucks. So like, I'm not betting on Carolina moving the ball super well, and it just makes more sense that like they're just going to use Adam Thielen the way that they have been with a low ADOT and using him to replicate the running game, right? Like he's just been freaking automatic. If I stack Miami and my fading Chase, I probably would have to. It's probably too expensive, right? Especially because I can't use Chuba Hubbard if I'm using Miami stack. So yeah, probably not going to have Chase if I stack Miami. I guess there's probably ways to do it, but they probably aren't that great. But yeah, Chuba Hubbard, I think that D'Onta Foreman is just a considerably better play at basically the same price point. And it's really interesting. Like this week we have Raheem Mostert and Kyren Williams, who are the same price point, and Kyren Williams is going to be half the ownership and in a really, really good spot. And then we also have Chuba Hubbard and D'Onta Foreman, who are basically the same price, and D'Onta Foreman's in a really, really good spot. So I really like that we have direct pivots for the chalk options this week. We'll see where Chuba Hubbard's ownership ends up. I'm hoping that he ends up still higher than D'Onta Foreman, but I think they're going to converge. I think Chuba Hubbard's going to be 25%, and I think D'Onta Foreman's going to be 20% or something like that. As far as like the way that I think the slate goes, like there's a lot of mediocre game environments that we can leverage, but there are much better game environments. I think that if you just focus on Miami, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay / Detroit, and Cincinnati / Seattle, I think that you're in a really good spot. The only one that I'm like, man, the contest sims really want me to go there is Chicago. And if I go Chicago, like I'm fine with that, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. I almost want to go just Justin Fields and Cole Kmet and then just use a whole bunch of value. Like go Justin Fields, Cole Kmet with Chuba Hubbard and Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase or something like that. And just try to stack up as much high upside wide receivers as I possibly can. But I don't know. Chicago I need to think more on that. I'll have some notes on that in the thoughts and notes tomorrow. But they're kind of the team that I'm like, I don't know. Miami, Philadelphia, the Rams, and then those two game environments, Detroit, Tampa Bay, and Cincinnati, Seattle. Those are the main focuses, with a big, big, big focus on Miami stacks being really, really necessary tomorrow to offset the Raheem Mostert. In any lineup that you don't have a Miami stack, you should have Raheem Mostert. Like, set a rule in your optimizer that says, if not a Miami stack, fucking stack Raheem Mostert. Just lock him in. Because that team's going to put up points. They're going to put up 37 points tomorrow, right? And you want exposure to that game. So if you don't have the passing game, you should have Raheem Mostert. Let's see. Other things that I think maybe matter. Did I cover everything? I think I covered everything. If you guys have any more questions, you can find me in the Discord over at PaydirtDFS.com. If you have not checked out PaydirtDFS.com, then you should. The NHL product has been awesome to start. NBA is coming up. We're going to have automated NBA projections this year, which is going to be a huge, 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 huge upgrade. And the NFL models have obviously been fantastic. If you've checked Twitter or X or whatever the fuck it is, you'll see screenshots and everything like that. And it's been a really good start to the year. And the community is just the best. You can ask anybody. The Discord is the best round. So if you haven't checked out PaydirtDFS.com, you should. If you've not subscribed, then you should. I'm going to go bring up the subscription options, which I should have done already, but I didn't. So if you are interested in subscriptions, NFL is $35 a month. All Access is $40. This includes NHL. And MLB obviously is going to go away here pretty soon, but NFL All Access is $200 for the entire year. This is going to go down at the beginning of next month as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate all of you. You are all great. Thank you for supporting me and for supporting Paydirt, and let's hope to collect a shit ton of trophies tomorrow. Thank you guys so much, and I will talk to you tomorrow.